music.
Hi, John Greger with Cold Snap Photography, and I'm here today to talk about tripods. It's a subject that a lot of different photographers will have a lot of different opinions about, but I think it's an important one. One of the big questions I get asked a lot by students and beginners into the field of photography, they come to me and they say, you know, I've got a wide angle lens, and I've got a 70 to 200 millimeter lens, and I've got this camera, and what's the next lens I should buy, or something along that lines, or what's the next camera body I should get. And they may have $1,500, $2,000, or even more invested in their camera and lenses. But when it came to buying a tripod, they simply bought the cheapest thing they could. Maybe it was a $50 little Velva tripod that the salesman at the camera store sold them and said, oh, this will be fine for whatever you need. And that's really a wrong approach. In fact, my opinion is that after your camera body, the next most important piece of equipment that you can own is a good tripod. And if you think about it, if you look at your shutter speed dial on the camera, and you assume that you can't handhold anything very adequately below a 30th of a second, or even that's assuming you have IS. And really, at a 30th of a second, even with IS, it's not going to be very sharp. All those shutter speeds below that are useless to you unless you have a good tripod. Or consider the wonderful world of night photography after the sun goes down, where you get into exposures that are multiple seconds, if not minutes, or even hours long. A good, sturdy tripod is essential for this kind of work. So the rule of thumb is that if you've spent $1,000 or $2,000 on your camera equipment, you should probably spend at least a third of that on a good tripod, because that will pay you dividends. It's also an extension of how you see the world. We don't just simply stand in one place at eye level and take pictures all the time, or we shouldn't. We should be getting down on our knees. We should be standing up on our tiptoes. We should be looking at things from a variety of different perspectives and vantage points. A good tripod will allow us to do that. So a good tripod is one that can go flat to the floor or go at least eye level, if not above, so that we have a wide variety of ways that we can see the world. I would say there's a host of different types of tripods, manufacturers and tripod manufacturers, tripod head manufacturers. There's just a ton of different types of manufacturers out there, all making different types of tripods in a lot of different configurations. Probably one of the oldest, most established tripod manufacturers is Manfrotto, and that is the one that I use. I use Manfrotto. I've stuck with Manfrotto for years, and by and large they make an excellent product. One of the things that you have to remember is that when you get into the upper layers of buying tripods, you are buying really two pieces of equipment. You're buying the tripod legs, the support mechanism, the three legs, and then the head, whatever head you put on the tripod. Those are two separate purchases. A lot of camera stores will sell them together in one bundle, but it's really two separate things that you're buying there, so that you can request to buy just the legs of one particular tripod and a head of another tripod that should match it. Almost all tripods that get into the upper level, into the pro level or advanced amateur level, have a threaded bolt in here that's a 3/8 inch 20 thread that's common to all heads, so you can interchange heads on the basic legs of the tripod. So as I said, one of the things that I look for in a good tripod is one that can go flat to the ground. So the legs should be able to splay out so that you can lay that tripod absolutely flat to the ground. The lower the better. In the springtime, when we're shooting wildflowers, you're going to want to get low to the ground. The other aspect I look for is height. I'm a pretty tall guy, I'm about 6 foot, and so I want a tripod that's going to go at least to my eye level, if not above my eye level, so that I have the ability to set it up in quite high areas to look over things if I need to or something like that. So I recommend a tripod that can go both ways. Tripod prices will range dramatically. On the low end, for a decent tripod, you have to spend, I would say, at least about $250 these days to get a good tripod. On the high end, you can spend thousands of dollars on a tripod and head. It all depends on what your budget is. So let's take a look at a couple of examples of what might work and how you might tie that into your system. If you're on a basic budget, you don't have a lot of money, but you want good sturdy support for your photographs, I would recommend the Manfrotto Pro 055. It comes in either aluminum or a basalt. The legs are that number, the Pro 055. They have flip levers to adjust the legs. The aluminum version with a standard 30-30 head. This is a three-way head, so you can tilt it back and forth, you can rotate it, and then you can pan it up and down like this. So this is a very basic tripod setup. This is going to cost you between about $250, maybe $200 to $300, depending on where you buy it, somewhere in that range. The head is a good head. It gives you a multitude of movements. It's nothing fancy. Some people don't like three-way heads. I think that they have their application, and we'll take a look at why a little later on. Moving up from there, the next basic tripod that you could use, the next difference here is you could get the 055 legs, but you could put a ball head on it. Ball heads come in a lot of different varieties and fashions. This is a Kirk ball head. The nice thing about a ball head is it's one basic adjustment, one knob, and you're able to adjust the camera any way that you want. There's usually there's secondary knobs. This one has, you'll see a total of 3 knobs. This is a tension knob for how loose the ball head will get, and then there's a knob here to rotate around the base of the camera. Most good ball heads will have all 3 of those: a tension knob, a rotating knob, and then your main adjustment knob to move the camera. Another ball head that I have here is one by Accutech, and Accutech has a little bit different design and approach. They've cut away some of the excess metal to make it even lighter, so it's a really ultra lightweight setup and can be very handy to use. The other thing that we should look at is also quick release plates. The type of quick release that the tripod head uses is actually quite critical. It's critical in the sense that you want to have it standard. And one of the things that drives me absolutely crazy about Manfrotto is that they use a variety of different quick release plate technologies. In fact, they probably have something like 8 different quick release plates for their different types of heads that they manufacture. And they manufacture some great heads, but the quick release system comes in a variety of different shapes and sizes. This is one of the basic ones, which is a basic rectangular plate that screws onto the bottom of the camera. This one does a pretty good job in staying in place. Some of the other ones, they have an octagonal one that's just terrible as far as staying in place on the camera. It's always wanting to rotate around on the camera and doesn't work very well at all. So the quick release plates on the basic heads are not nearly as good as what's called an Arca Swiss quick release. And an Arca Swiss quick release is one that fits into these slots right here. And I'll show you a close-up of this a little bit later on. The wonderful thing about the Arca Swiss system is that it's standardized. When you get into the upper level heads, the professional level heads, like the Kirk ball head, the Accutech ball head, and some of the Gimble heads and other things, that quick release system is standard throughout all of them. The same plate will work on all other systems that have the Accutech system, which is wonderful because I own and use about 3 different tripod heads, and I switch between them all the time. If I had to switch my quick release plates every time I switched between them, it would defeat the purpose of having a quick release. So having a standard quick release that's the same for all is really handy because you can use different heads for different applications. Okay, so the legs we've looked at and we've talked a little bit about. There's two basic varieties of legs. There is aluminum, and then there is what's called basalt or carbon fiber. Basalt and carbon fiber are very, very similar material. They're lighter. They tend to be a little heavier on your checkbook. The aluminum are less expensive, but they're a heavier substance, so the overall weight of the tripod tends to be a little bit more. When you get into the basalt or carbon fiber, they're very, very light. This little setup right here is quite nice, especially for travel. It's really lightweight. It folds up fairly well into a smaller, compact size. It can fit in most standard luggage, especially if we were to take the head off and store it separately. So it's a good travel tripod. The basic tripod that I use is a pretty substantial tripod, and it is a carbon fiber. This is a Gitzo carbon fiber. This is a 3541 XLS. It's an extra tall one, so it will go up quite high. It'll go up about 7 feet or so, 7.5 feet with the ball head. So it gets quite high, which can be handy. It will the nice, wonderful thing about this is it will also lay flat. So the legs come in two different varieties, the aluminum and the carbon fiber. The heads, there's three basic varieties of tripod heads. The most basic one is a three-way head, as we looked at right here with this one. It also, they manufacture, Gitzo manufactures a three-way head, which is this head right here, and this is called a junior geared head, a 410 junior geared head. I've had this retrofitted with an Arca Swiss style plate here. It had this weird big square plate on the top that Gitzo puts on there, which is a piece of crap. I had it retrofitted by my good friend John Zeiss at 4th Generation Design. I'll give you a link at the end of the video for his website, so you can go there and take a look at what he does. And it works really well. I'll show you a little later why I really like this head and what the application is. The second basic type of head is a ball head, and we've looked at a couple of different types of them. This is the Kirk, which I use. It's a very substantial ball head, and it will hold a lot. This one is a big one. It'll hold a lot of weight. Kirk makes smaller ones, as well as the Acrotech and others, Really Right Stuff, and some other manufacturers that make a variety of different ball heads. The nice thing about a ball head is it's really quick and easy to use because of that one main knob that allows you to adjust it very quickly and tighten it back down. It has a couple drawbacks, and I'll show you that a little bit later on. The last type of head is a very specialized use head, and it's called a Gimble Head. And the Gimble Head, the one I've got here, is a 4th generation design Gimble Head. It's designed for mounting large lenses in it. This has got a quick release lever for the quick release system. The lens plate just slides in here. It's designed for large lenses that have collar mount lens on them. So it would not be used in general photographic application, primarily used by wildlife, bird photographers, and things like that. You wouldn't necessarily use this for landscape purposes. There's a variety of different manufacturers. There's Really Right Stuff, I believe, has a gimbal head. There's the Cobra by Kirk, and then there's the Wimberley, which is a very well-established old-time manufacturer of gimbal heads. I prefer the 4th generation design. He makes a wonderful, very lightweight yet sturdy and strong head. Let's take a look at some nuances of how these heads work. I'm going to set up and I'm going to show you a couple different things so you can see these heads in action. Okay, the first one we're going to look at is the Gimble Head, and this is the 4th generation design Mongoose Gimble Head. And it's designed to have a large lens. I've got a 500 millimeter 4.5 lens mounted to this thing with a camera, and it's balanced quite nicely, you can see, so I can move it around quite easily. I can track wildlife, I can track birds, I can move it up and down. I can also rotate this way from horizontal to vertical because of the collar mount of the lens. So it gives me wonderful flexibility to move around really, really fast, change with adapting conditions, but yet it's sturdy and stable. Once I get into a position, it's going to stay there and it's going to offer the stability that I need for the photograph. So these heads have a very useful purpose for these long lenses, and they work really, really well. Okay, next we're going to take a look at a ball head. This is the Kirk ball head, as I mentioned, with the Arca Swiss style plate. I've got a nice little Arca Swiss style plate that's a bi-directional. I can put this on the camera in either direction really quickly and easily. It's snug to the camera, which is also very nice. And once it's on there, it's not going anywhere. It's locked in. The ball head's great because I can change my angle. I can rotate any way I want. There's one spot on this particular ball head that allows me to flip over to a vertical if I want. So I just simply pick that spot, lock it in, and now I'm at a vertical. These heads are designed to work very quickly and be a generally good landscape and general purpose head for a tripod. They work very, very well for that purpose. All right, the next head we've got is the 3-way. This is the Manfrotto 410 Junior geared head. And what I like about this head, this is an excellent head, and what I really like about it is it's very precise. Again, it's got the Arca Swiss style plate on it because it was retrofitted. That's not standard, that's not what comes from the factory, but I had it retrofitted by John Zeiss, 4th generation design. The nice thing about this head is that it's geared, so when I make a movement, I can make very precise movements and tweak it just slightly to adjust for either landscape purposes or, most importantly, what I really like this lens for is for macro work because it's very, very precise, and I'll show you why in just a little bit. I can also move it quite quickly by turning the knob's quick release, and I can go to vertical or horizontal, or as I said, I can make very slight adjustments that are very, very precise with this. And that's one of the wonderful things about this lens. I'll show you these in action here in just a moment. Okay, in order to show you and demonstrate to you the advantages and disadvantages, in particular of a ball head versus that junior gear head, I needed to give you the point of view as if you're looking at the subject of what I'm going to photograph. You thought those flowers were just there for added little splash. Well, we've focused in on one of those flowers. I'd take you outside today, but it's about 15 below zero, so there's not too many flowers blooming right now. But here we have a rose, and we are going to make a slight adjustment because we want to adjust our position just a little bit. I'm working with the ball head here, so I release the ball head, and now I move the camera into the next appropriate location, and then I'm going to lock it into place. Did you see that? Did you see as I locked it into place how the camera adjusted just slightly? Not a lot, but just a little bit. And in a macro situation, or if you're using a really long telephoto lens, that can have a huge difference in the way that the photograph looks to us. That is called ball head creep. Not a very comfortable situation, I'm sure. The 3-way head eliminates that problem. Let's take a look. Here we are on the 410 Junior geared head, 3-way head, and I'm going to make a little adjustment here, and I just made the adjustment. There's no subsequent movement or creep at all. I can make a series of very small adjustments that fine-tune it very, very easily, and it locks it into place, and you don't have any motion or movement at all. It is one of the reasons why I really enjoy working with this head. It's a great head for landscape as well, because sometimes there's slight adjustments and movements for landscape. I also use it for architecture quite a bit because slight adjustments in architecture to line things up are sometimes critical. The one drawback that I would say with this head is that in the wintertime in particular, because it is geared, the gears in there have a lube on them, and when you take it outside, that lube really gets heavy and it's hard to work the head in the wintertime. So I tend to switch back to my ball head when I'm working in the wintertime for landscape work, but I use this junior geared head a lot. The ball head's great for being quick and easy, the gimbal heads are great for the long lenses, and the three-way head is good for precision work. Well, that wraps up our discussion about tripods. I hope it was helpful. Tripods are as individual as what your photographic style is, so you need to do a little experimenting and find out what will work for you. And I know that can be a little hard because they're not an inexpensive piece of equipment to go out and purchase and then sell and buy another one, or you might end up with a whole collection, kind of like I have over the years. But talk to different photographers, talk to folks, see what they use, ask them why they like it, what kind of work that they do, and then you can narrow in on your decision and take a look at the right piece of equipment for you. Hope this helped.